Without Marcus Anderson, I hope to prove to you in this video that Meghan Markle wouldn't have the level of global fame that she enjoys now.
Her guest list to her wedding showed her real ambition was to be a star in California.
There was no need for her to be hustling this way.
A Soho House basic, always a Soho House basic bitch.
In every fairy tale, people focus on the prince. But in this story, the most important man was never the one holding a title. Before the royal headlines, before the engagement photos, there was a gatekeeper who moved like a ghost through the rooms that mattered. The kind of connection you do not post about because his value is in what stays off the record. He was the link to private dinners, members-only circles, and introductions that can flip a life in one night. That is what makes the Marcus angle so uncomfortable. Not because it sounds scandalous, but because it sounds practical. He was not a best friend in the cute, harmless way people want to imagine. He was access. He was timing. He was the person who knew who to sit next to, what to say, and which door to walk through so you never looked like you were asking for anything.
And everybody all around the world that you would want to know. The very rich, the very connected. Anybody who is anybody would be in Marcus Anderson's little black book. And he's never betrayed a confidence. He's never made a slip.
And here is the twist. A gatekeeper can open doors, but he can also close them. Quietly, without a statement, without a fight, just by no longer returning calls, no longer making the introduction, no longer smoothing the path. When the public watches the love story, they miss the infrastructure behind it, but the infrastructure is what holds everything up. And if that foundation shifts, the whole image starts to wobble. For all the talk about being self-made, the truth is her rise was never a one-woman show. If you look at the pattern, it reads less like spontaneity and more like coordination. The same faces, the same rooms, the same kind of exclusive spaces where the right introduction can do more than a resume ever could. She did not trip into the next chapter of her life. She positioned herself for it, one invite at a time.
This is what Meghan has been doing. She's a piece of Klingon, like she clings to somebody who can get her there. So Meghan manages to befriend one person of a very popular group, and then that person introduces her to the others. And because she's being brought in by somebody they trust, she's welcomed.
Carefully chosen circle after another. And that is why the Marcus factor still hangs over the whole narrative. Not because it is scandal for scandal's sake, but because it threatens the brand story. If the person who allegedly connected the dots decides he is done being invisible, the "I did it all myself" script starts to look like a polished edit instead of the raw footage. Now zoom in on the setting people keep whispering about: Toronto, a private club ecosystem where the lighting is soft, the drinks are expensive, and the most valuable currency is being seen by the right person at the right moment. In rooms like that, you do not just attend. You play the room. You learn the routes, the alliances, the angles. You understand that a single seat placement can change the entire night. That is where she allegedly became more than an actress chasing a bigger role. She became a strategist building a future. While everyone else was mingling, she was mapping.
She married for money. It's very clear she bagged the elephant. She was thrilled. She became a, quote, princess.
Well, you can...
It was planned from the beginning. She denied being interested in the royal family, which she totally was. I know someone who knows the ex-husband who said she had a vision board with Prince Harry on it.
Before they met?
Yes, and she wants to
That's
pretend.
impressive. You got to admit that is impressive.
While others were hoping for luck, she was manufacturing it. The charm was real, the smile was practiced, and the mystery was part of the packaging. And the part that makes this messy is simple. Access only works when the gate stays open. If the gatekeeper stops protecting the story stops being controllable. The shine was real, but so were the whispers behind it. Once you live in that members-only universe long enough, questions start to follow you like perfume. Who is funding the trips? Who is picking up the tab? Why are certain invites so private they feel like they were designed to leave no paper trail?
In her early days, she was totally reliant on Soho House to pay for her travel, to pay for her accommodation.
Nobody can point to a single receipt and say, there it is. But in rooms built on status and secrecy, rumor does not need proof to survive. It just needs repetition. That is why the online chatter never really dies. People love a mystery with soft lighting, mix ambition, beauty, exclusivity, and a private club culture that runs on discretion. And you get gossip that practically writes itself. And the most dangerous part is not a photo or a text or some dramatic confession. The most dangerous part, if the internet is even half right, is something quieter. A rumored list. Not a list like a tabloid would print, but the kind of internal record people claim exists in elite circles. Who was at which dinner? Who was connected to which table? Who was hosting and who was inviting? The kind of information that is harmless when it stays behind the curtain and catastrophic when it leaks into daylight. To be clear, none of this is verified. No documents, no confirmed records, just persistent digital noise that refuses to disappear because it fits the way those worlds operate. In that picture, charm is currency, access is power, and the right gatekeeper can turn a familiar face into the most requested name in the room. And here's the part that turns the story from gossip to threat. If anything like that ever surfaced publicly, it would not just embarrass someone. It would rewrite the origin story. It would turn a carefully built narrative into a debate. And once the debate starts, control is hard to get back. No one can say for sure whether Marcus ever kept anything real or whether the whole list idea is just a story that grew legs online. But the way powerful circles react to the possibility of exposure tells you something. People do not spend energy guarding a rumor unless it touches close enough to a truth they cannot afford to argue about in public. That is the real tension here. Every polished brand has a front-facing version and a private version. The one built for interviews and the one built in back rooms where favors are remembered and introductions have value. The whispers around Meghan Markle have always pointed to that second world, not as a scandal you can prove, but as a system you can recognize. In that system, connections are not random, they are curated. The room itself is a filter. Soho House is not just a backdrop, it is a gate. People show up because the guest list is the product. Money, influence, and ambition all move through the same narrow hallway. And the real transactions are rarely written down. If the speculation is even partly true, she was not simply drifting through glamorous nights. She was reading the room with intent, knowing which conversations mattered, which people talk, which people buy, which people open doors, turning small talk into positioning, turning visibility into momentum, making the climb look effortless because effort is easier to sell when you never admit it was calculated. And Marcus Anderson in that version of the story is the quiet mechanic, the person who can connect the dots without leaving fingerprints. Discreet, useful, always close enough to manage access, far enough to avoid being a headline. The problem is what happens when influence and ambition live in the same room long enough. Networking starts to resemble negotiation. Introductions start to resemble leverage. And once a public narrative depends on the past staying simple, even the suggestion of a more complicated backstory becomes a threat.
Markle only becomes prominent for Soho House, guys, after she starts being on Suits and she's introduced to Marcus Anderson. And then she gets more consistent and more prominent work, okay? Because then she could be in the presence of Marcus Anderson.
For years, the clean version of the story has been easy to sell. Actress meets prince. Life transforms, end of chapter. But every perfect rise eventually runs into the same question. Who was actually steering the plot? And who was simply acting out the scenes? That is where the Marcus rumor hits different. Not because it comes with a document you can hold up on camera, but because it suggests something more dangerous than paperwork. Memory. The kind of memory that lives in the margins of private rooms, where names are exchanged like currency and favors are never written down. If someone like Marcus Anderson ever decided to start remembering out loud, the illusion does not shatter all at once. It flickers first, then it spreads. People love to say silence is power, but silence also has an expiration date, and the internet speculation keeps circling the same idea. The quiet one may be getting tired of staying quiet. In that version of the story, he is not a side character. He is the behind-the-scenes builder, the person who understood how to move someone from known to untouchable. Yet, when the royal narrative became a global product, when Meghan Markle and Prince Harry turned their story into a branded saga through Netflix, his presence seemed to fade, not in a dramatic way, in a calculated way, fewer appearances, less acknowledgement. a background figure pushed even further into the background. And that kind of quiet erasure can feel personal.
It's like a parasite always lurking in their shadow. No normal family has a constant third wheel, male or female, leeching onto their every move. Marcus is practically glued to.
Imagine helping someone climb into the brightest spotlight on earth only to watch yourself get edited out of the montage. No public credit, no respectful nod, just absence. Then there is the timing layer. Soho House has been under heavier scrutiny in the public conversation than it used to be. And when any elite brand starts drawing attention, the people connected to it start thinking differently. They start protecting themselves. They start choosing which version of the story they want to be attached to before someone else chooses for them. If Marcus is repositioning, it would not need to look like revenge. It could look like control. Because when the velvet rope world gets messy, the ones who used to manage access often try to manage the narrative next. The part people keep missing is that recognition can be the softest form of a threat. In a world where information is currency, wanting credit is not just about ego, it is about leverage. Because the moment someone starts saying, I was there, they are also saying, I know what really happened. If Marcus ever decides to speak publicly, it probably would not sound like revenge. It would sound like clarification. The kind delivered calmly, with a tone that implies he has nothing to gain except accuracy. But accuracy is dangerous when the brand depends on the simplified version staying intact.
Being a Deal or No Deal girl, she was calling herself a model, and she was starring in a show Suits. She used to charge almost $30,000 per trip, which is why she was making good money. It wasn't on Suits, it was on her yachting trips.
One insider perspective can turn a fairy tale into a timeline, and timelines are where myths go to die. That is why the online chatter keeps dragging this back to Harry. Not because anyone has verified anything, but because it is the obvious pressure point. If the origin story shifts, the relationship itself starts to feel different. A romance built on destiny reads one way. A romance built on design reads another. The rumor narrative paints Harry as someone who is no longer fighting every headline the way he used to. Not loudly, quietly, less reactive, less eager to perform the united front on command. Allegedly looking back at old moments with a new kind of doubt, replaying conversations, studying photos, reinterpreting how he entered the story. And once that doubt gets in, it spreads. Because the question is not just, did she love him? The question becomes, did she choose him the way he thought she did? Was it fate or was it strategy?
They're not poor. They just wanted to land a rich man and make easy money.
Was it a meeting that happened or a meeting that was made to happen? None of this is confirmed. It is all speculation layered on speculation. But the emotional logic behind it is why people believe it. When someone starts hearing that the early chapters were curated, they do not just feel betrayed, they feel edited, like they were cast into a role without being told who wrote the script. So if Marcus really steps out of the background, the fallout would not be about friendship drama. It would be about authorship, who shaped the beginning, who controlled the access, who knew the rooms, the timing, the introductions, and whether the prince was the lead character or the most valuable scene in someone else's plan. These claims do not land like harmless chatter. They land like a stress test on everything he stepped away from, because if even a fraction feels plausible, it turns the sacrifice into a question mark. And there is nothing more corrosive than the thought that a love story you defended was, to someone else, a long-term play. That is why the silence matters. Not the loud tabloid noise, but the quieter shift behind the smiles, the retreat, the distance, the instinct to step out of the frame. When heartbreak is public, people argue. When heartbreak is private, people disappear. But the ripple does not stop at the couple. When one domino tips in elite circles, it rarely falls alone. If Marcus Anderson truly has revelations coming, even in the mildest form, the tremors hit the institution that made the whole mythology possible. Soho House has always sold one product above all: controlled intimacy, privacy with velvet edges, a place where proximity feels earned and discretion feels automatic. Gossip like this threatens the core promise. It reframes the club from a sanctuary for creatives into a showroom for power games, where relationships are curated and access has invisible price tags. That is a nightmare no brand can fully spin away because the problem is not proof. The problem is perception. And perception moves faster than any statement. In that climate, people start acting like something is coming. They prune their timelines, they untag photos, they scrub old captions, they stop posting check-ins. They avoid the rooms altogether, not because they did anything wrong, but because no one wants their name adjacent to a story that is trending. If the code ever breaks, the consequences are not limited to one person's image. It threatens the entire culture of closed doors. Because once the public believes the curtain has lifted, everything looks like evidence. Every dinner becomes a meeting. Every friendly photo becomes a connection. Every introduction becomes a transaction. And that is what keeps the internet glued. The possibility of the next shoe dropping. Some believe a quiet interview is coming. Others whisper about a book, an off-the-record conversation that becomes on the record the moment it leaks. Some insist Meghan Markle's side is already lawyering up, ready to smother the story before it gets oxygen. And some think nothing concrete will ever surface, just vague hints and anonymous breadcrumbs that keep the machine fed. Either way, the damage is already in motion, because once people start watching like detectives, the mystery becomes the headline, and the headline becomes the reality. The truth is, it does not take a confession to collapse a fairy tale. Sometimes all it takes is one person stepping out of the background and refusing to be edited out anymore. Because if these whispers have taught us anything, it is that the most dangerous stories are not the ones shouted from a podium. They are the ones that live in side glances, missing names, deleted photos, and the sudden panic that spreads when a gatekeeper decides the gate is his again. Maybe nothing ever drops. Maybe Marcus never speaks in public. Maybe this all stays trapped in the same online fog where rumors go to recycle themselves forever. But even that outcome has a cost, because the narrative is already bruised. Once people start asking whether the origin story was curated, the innocence is gone. Every old clip looks different. Every timeline feels staged. Every "we met by chance" line starts sounding like marketing. And if Marcus does talk, even softly, even carefully, it will not just be another celebrity drama. It will be a recalibration, a reminder that the elite world runs on discretion until discretion stops being mutually beneficial. Then the same secrecy that protected people becomes the weapon that destroys them. So the real question is not whether the rumors are true. The real question is this: who controls the story when the person who knows the rooms, the introductions, and the real sequence of events decides he is done staying quiet? Because empires are not usually taken down by enemies, they are taken down by insiders who stop protecting them. If you want the next update the moment it drops, stay locked in with BarzBuzz. If this saga had you shook, wait till you see what's next. You already know what it is. BarzBuzz got the real, raw, and unfiltered breakdowns. So don't forget to like, subscribe, drop a comment, and share this with someone who needs to catch up.